So I'm Scott Turnipseed, the mayor of Eagle, Colorado, and would like to thank everyone for coming today. Very much appreciated. I introduced everyone who's here. This is Larry Pardee, our town manager, Kara Koppel, our sustainability specialist, Laura Hartman with the Adam Palmer Sustainability Fund, and we had a little bit of an audible at the last minute, but I have a friend of mine, Casey Sheehan, who was the former CEO of Patagonia from 2005 to 2014, and he lives in Jackson and was nice enough to want to join our discussion, so he's part of it too. Eagle is a town of about 7,500 people, just west of Vail, about 30 miles or so. I don't like to call us a bedroom community, but we're certainly a support community for the resort. And we're undergoing changing demographics in our town big time. We used to be very agricultural, very, worker bee sort of community. Now, after COVID, it's changing quite dramatically. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to speak at a couple of these prior conferences, and when I came to Mountain Towns 2030, I started to realize that yes, there are a lot of big resort towns with a lot of financial resources, but there's also a lot of smaller towns like Eagle that have a big part to play in our sustainability and climate action stuff. So I started thinking, boy, we really need to do something as these smaller towns. And we have very limited financial resources. Our general revenues are about $12.5 million a year, and we're setting aside 2% for our operations, for our sustainability efforts, and then more for our capital projects. But I just wanted to give you an idea of the limited resources we have. And one thing maybe I'd like to see, because we can change things up, how many elected officials are in the room today? Okay, so we might answer a few questions if you have questions on how to get this going in your community. So how we got started was, unfortunately, we had a couple of deaths in our community with Adam Palmer and Andy Jessen. In 2021, they were killed in an avalanche. And Adam Palmer was good friends with Luke Carton, and Luke Carton is very instrumental in Mountain Towns 2030. So Luke came down to our town and gave us a talk about what Mountain Towns 2030 was doing and what we could do for sustainability efforts. And Luke really spoke more to the financial, return on investments, looking at things not so much in cubic metric tons of carbon, but more about what it's just good for the planet overall. And it really struck home with me. And after he did that, we had a couple of beers at a brew pub, and I'm not going to say it was beer induced, but I went home that night and I told my wife, we're doing this. We're going to go all in, make a goal, probably the most aggressive goal there is at Mountain Towns 2030 at this point. And then I had to go back to the council with 7 people that were pretty divided. We were not all left or all right. And through some crafty persuasion, we got a 7-0 vote on our very ambitious goal. So once we did that, we were thinking, how do we get started? And instead of having a very detailed plan and map, and then following that, we said, no, we're gonna get going. And I think the very most important part, in my opinion, to making these goals happen is to change the culture in your organization. And once that culture starts to shift, all of your ways to meet your goals become so much easier. When your police start putting in electric police cars in their budget, or your public works starts to do that, it just makes it so much easier. And we've had tremendous buy-in from our staff. It has been unbelievable to see what they would like to do to help us with our goals. Another very important piece is to get yourself a town manager who is as passionate about sustainability as you are. We were very fortunate that we had a town manager resign. Larry Pardee was a town manager up here in Jackson for a number of years. very passionate about sustainability. And as sort of a side note, the only reason that he ended up coming down to Eagle is that Larry and I met at a Mountain Towns 2030 event in Park City. And about 6 months after that, we had our town manager resign, and I called Larry up and said, hey, you remember me? And Larry's very thoughtful. It took me about 4 hours of phone call to get him to think about coming down to Eagle. And really, when he was thinking of coming, some of the local business leaders and stuff were like, God, why would he leave Jackson to come down to Little Eagle? And I said, he is really passionate about sustainability and climate action. We have this goal in place, and he would like to come help us and bring all the knowledge that he's learned from Jackson down to Eagle. So he's a critical piece. Another critical piece for us is our partnerships. Since we have very limited financial resources, we count heavily on our partners. We're very fortunate in the Val Valley to have some really great partners. Some of them are nonprofits, such as Walking Mountains, Adam Palmer Sustainability Fund that Laura's with, Eagle County, State of Colorado, the federal government, Holy Cross Energy, and this one was last on my list, but it'll be best for everyone. Vail Honeywagon, our single hauler, who brought cookies. She's such a good partner, she brings cookies to this presentation. So you get some great partnerships, and with those partnerships, you can get a lot done, and this is a little mushy or whatever, but as soon as I saw Jennifer from Vail Honeywagon today, I haven't seen her for about a year, we probably hugged for about 30 seconds, knowing all the great things that we've accomplished through Vail Honeywagon in the couple of years that we've had this goal in place. So overall, set the goal. Don't worry that you don't have a great plan to start. Try to change your culture, work with your partners, get yourself a good team, and good things are going to happen. So I'm going to turn this over to Larry Pardee, our town manager, and he's going to speak to some more of the specifics of what we're doing.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Larry Pardee, and I've had the great fortune of working in local government. September 1st, I started my 45th year. I've had the pleasure of working for the town of Vail, Colorado, for 25 years. I worked in the public works world. I met Mr. Turnipseed at Mountain Towns 2030, and it was through Andy Bierman, the mayor, that I became friends with, that I had met before they even started Mountain Towns 2030, because we collaborated with our two organizations, Jackson and Park City, and out of that, we did a lot of great work in Jackson. To my friends in the audience, hi all, and thank you for your passion and commitment to sustainability. But with that, the one thing Scott forgot to mention when we met that night in front of Andy Bierman, Scott was talking to Andy, and then I was watching him, I'm like, man, he's familiar. That gentleman is familiar. Somewhere our paths crossed in the recent past, and I couldn't quite get it, but I was waiting for Andy. He came over, shook my hand, gave me a hug, and I kept looking. Next thing I know, Scott's like, I'm like, how do we know each other? Well, it turned out 4.5 years earlier, I applied for the town manager, and I was one of the finalists, but they selected another person to run the show. So I'm like, oh, you, the guy that didn't hire me. So that's how it started. From there, we became friends, and a great opportunity presented itself. So real quick, I'm going to talk fast because I threw a bunch of slides. So Scott, he's right. It's about the passion of setting a goal and having the sense of purpose and the will to follow through. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I'm going to also use a term that I heard yesterday. I'm going to use several terms I heard yesterday. The power of partnership. Little towns like Eagle, Colorado, that do not have the financial capacity or the staffing capacity to take on massive goals can still make meaningful gains purely by the power of partnerships and collaboration. That is your powerful tool. That is your get out of jail free card to all you small towns that are wondering about how you're going to move forward. Don't fear it. Embrace it, accept it, and reach out. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You'll be amazed how many people are out there that will jump in the game and help you if you just ask. So thank you to Laura and the Palmer Fund. We collaborated right when I got to town. They were beginning to develop our 2030 action plan. As the mayor indicated, we set 2 aggressive goals, our net zero 2030 for the community, our net zero 2028 for the town of Eagle. In those goals, that is our vision, but now we need a strategic action plan to follow, to guide us there. And thank you to Laura and Kristen and some others. They did an amazing job and put together a 66-page document that is our strategic document that guides us this day. The other thing I would say is, in that, we had to identify a couple of key items, many key items, but one that really resonated is, what is our current baseline today? The town of Eagle, as the mayor indicated, about 70% of our daily population, full-time population, commutes up valley to the job centers, Vail, Beaver Creek, the ski resorts, and so on. So the amount of travel our community does is quite high. 43% or 47% is through our transportation sector. 23% of our emissions comes from our homes, 16% from commercial buildings, light industrial, and then the balance comes from our waste. So total, we understand from a macro point of view what our community's energy emissions are. From there, we laid out our strategic roadmap, and it's only a portion of it. There's a lot more to it, but by year 2026, we're going to reevaluate what did we accomplish, what did we learn, and we're going to adjust the next remaining 4 years to the conclusion. But it's a powerful document. I encourage you, if you get a chance, get a copy of it. We've left links and stuff to get it, and cherry pick the pieces that work for your communities. Please, next slide. And so that is the community side, the 2030. The town government, we are able, thank you to Scott Turnipseed and our council, to put funding in the budget and hire our first-time sustainability coordinator, Kira. And she's a passionate warrior, highly educated, highly passionate, and brought a lot of energy and passion to our great organization. And with her, she's started engaging our employees, having the conversations, trying to help educate, understand their fears. And then she quickly put together our internal 2028 climate action plan for the town of Eagle. It's a subset of the bigger one, but it's really important because it's very strategic to who we are and how we're set up. So, next, through it, our Public Works Department was working with Year Out Energy. A shout out to our Year Out Energy fans. We know we have one of our representatives here. And they helped us do an energy performance contracting system that's set up under the state of Colorado. I think most states have it because it's a federal program. We did it when I was here in Jackson too. And so we were able to work with this firm. They came in and did a major assessment, helped us understand our water and wastewater facilities and the amount of energy they use. Did you know that 73 to 75% of all the energy in the world is used by local municipalities supplying their local citizens? It doesn't matter what type of government you're under, but if you provide water, sewer, and electricity, 75% is local government actually using it to supply that quality of life to their communities. So who has the biggest responsibility to make meaningful gains? Local government. Well, here we go. Thank you to Kira and our Public Works and Mayor Turnipseed and the council. We applied for some grant funding. We got $750,000. We got Year Out Energy, our technical consultant, who's been guiding us in developing the project, and it's hit the ground running. And is it fully operational yet?
We should have our permission to operate next week.
We hope to be on by next week. They've done an amazing job, and Kira's going to show more, but I got to keep moving. But also I wanted to talk about real quick, small wins, small wins. Jackie, wave your hand. So we have, she's even wearing a green shirt, thank you. This young woman has the heart of a green team warrior. I mean, a warrior spirit. She didn't need money, she just has passion, she has love, and she has an unrelentless commitment to challenging our staff to do everything, even without funding. And you'd be amazed at the little program she did for free, just because she wanted to do something. So she is our green team warrior. We're happy to have her here, and we're thankful for everything she's doing, because she's changing the culture that Scott talked about. Now, next thing, so our recycling, compost, our trash hauler is here, Vail Honey Wagon. We have a third-party vendor that provides our services to our residents in Eagle. Mayor Turnipseed and another council member, Jeff Grimmer, came together, and they're really passionate working with Laura and some other nonprofits in our community, and then we invited in our trash hauler, And we started, as Scott indicated, for the first time, compost, recycling, and trash to all of our residents in Eagle. I think we got it all installed by October of a year ago, so we got 1 full year under our belt. And it's working really well, but we've learned some lessons. Like anything, it's not perfect. So another saying I'm going to steal from yesterday is we're going to fail forward. Our compost program right now, we only have about a 25% take rate. In other words, only 25% of the residents have agreed so far to utilize the compost. So we know we got more education to do. We know we're going to consider talking about some updated policies with our hauler to help change behavior to get a stronger take rate on that front. But it's a great program. I think, as the mayor indicated, we're the first or second in the whole state of Colorado to implement it. So thank you to the leadership and vision of the mayor, Mr. Grimmer, help from the power of partnerships and collaboration with the Palmer Fund. Energy cohort. So this is one that Eagle County, if you're familiar with that area, Vale, Avon, Eagle County, Town of Gypsum, Town of Eagle, Minturn, Red Cliff, we're all the incorporated municipalities. And then there's a lot of county metro districts that create the Eagle County as a whole. Eagle County is about 55, 60,000 people. We came together. We all wanted to update our energy code through a cohort, and we used some local consultants and engineers and some nonprofits to help lead it. And in the end, our council adopted the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code, the IECC, and we also adopted a couple other measures for solar ready and charging ready, or charging station ready. But we've implemented and we've started. Again, we're learning on the fly. It's not perfect. We're starting to feel a little pushback from some of our community about some of the fees tied to measures that were allowed just a year ago that are no longer allowed without either paying a large fee and or mitigating it through some sort of, you can mitigate it with PV or carbon offsets or other ways to mitigate the new outdoor fireplaces that some of the community really enjoys to do. So we're going to bring that portion of our code back, talk to council and see how they want to proceed. But overall, we've done a really amazing job, and the code is going to be adopted countywide. I think everybody except for the county has officially accepted it. Or the county, okay, the county officially adopted it. So we're all in. So from a countywide, no matter where you're building, Mr. Turnipseed is an architect and owns a construction company. He builds houses all over the valley. He's familiar with it. The last one, and Scott's already said it, is the changing of the lens, setting a clear goal, inspiring our organization. The former chief of police agreed to buy a Chevy Volt for our code enforcement, first EV in the town. And then we bought another EV for our water wastewater group. And then now we have a van and 2 Ford pickups for our public works teams. So the changes happen. The lenses are set, a strategic document, and Kira and Jackie being our great cheerleaders and passionate people, getting our folks to change culture, change belief, and approach the way they go about their daily services in a new way. Last one, real quick, and the mayor talked about it a few minutes ago. Mayor Turnipseed's idea, he called me up one day and said, I want to set a fund aside. And so we talked about a range of numbers, and we agreed on $250,000. For a little town of Eagle, Colorado, we took $250,000, set it on the side, created a sustainability fund. The sustainability fund both works internal and external, because remember, we have the 2 goals. We have the community goal of 2030 and the town goal, town government operations of 2028. If you want to apply for it, you go read the policy, fill out the application, but you have to show that you're going to bring $2 for every $1 council allocates out of that fund. And it's been amazing. So from the folks in the community, the nonprofits or other agencies that qualify to do it, and the work that Kira and our departments are doing, we've been able to do more than a 2-to-1 match. In other words, that $250,000 is probably greater than $1 million of investment. And it all was because of an idea of Scott Turnipseed, our mayor. Don't underestimate the power of inspiring people and just putting a seed there of some funding, but then challenging them to find other funding sources to come to the table and maximize your investments. I think with that, I'm done.
That was impressive.
Okay, so the mayor and our town manager, Larry, have just covered everything that was done before I even got to the town, which I think is pretty impressive. So I just really wanted to highlight that the towns can start a lot of this work on their own before even hiring sustainability staff, by leading with a clear goal and a clear vision, and really, infusing that culture like they've mentioned. Our public works team went ahead and bought those EVs, found a great deal on them. They already had the solar plan in the works, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more now, but I just wanted to reiterate those points. So Larry did mention that our solar array was really made possible with energy performance contracting, though we did end up paying for it in cash because we hope to utilize the funds from the IRA to get that tax credit direct pay. So we could potentially get up to 30% of the project cost back. But the benefit to us of still going with the energy performance contract is that it really allowed us to expand our staff capacity. So right now, even though we have a lot of people at the town doing this work, we only have one sustainability specialist, which is me. And so this really helped us to get a whole project management team in there to work with the subcontractors, the solar company, the electricians, and really allow me to continue to work on the rest of our net zero action planning. So looking forward to the next phase, we're looking at building electrification. And the way that we hope to incorporate this is through another grant, which our partners Year Out Energy also helped us with that application because they already had a lot of familiarity around our buildings and our systems and what we had planned to do. And so we were fortunate enough to receive a grant from the Colorado Energy Office for public building electrification, for which we hope to start the planning phase this fall. We're just waiting on our purchase order from them right now. And that detailed assessment of all of our public buildings is going to give us a really good idea of what a feasible implementation looks like, which buildings are best suited for this, and what do we have the budget for. After we finish that planning phase, we're unlocking $750,000 worth of funding to put into these buildings. So that's next on the horizon. Something else that is next on the horizon is looking at further upgrading that energy code that Larry mentioned. So right now, we adopted the 2021 IECC with electric ready, solar ready, and EV ready amendments, plus the exterior energy offset program, which accounts for those outdoor heating sources. And so we've worked on a regional collaboration to go even beyond that and to look at what a net zero code by 2030 could actually look like. So we worked with this whole regional partnership between Eagle, Pitkin, and Garfield counties with Lotus Engineering and Sustainability, and that was all convened by the Climate Action Collaborative. So this is helping us move forward towards our 2030 goal while still engaging in all of those collaborations. The next quick thing I want to mention is our e-bike rebate program that we were able to implement this year. And so this was another grant-funded project. As you can tell, we really like to leverage grants to get things done. That's really the condition, as Larry mentioned, that 2-to-1 funding applies to any project that I wanted to implement, as well as projects that the community sought funding for from us. So I went through that same process. I had to bring grant funding to the table. I had to make sure we were expanding our dollars by 2 or 3 times the original investment that the town was making. And so with this program, we were able to cover the cost of an entire e-bike for about 23 residents. This program just closed. So it might not be a huge number of people, but it's really changing the lifestyle of these individuals in our community and how they get around town, and it's tackling that largest source of emissions that Larry mentioned, which is transportation. 47% of all of the greenhouse gas emissions within the town of Eagle are from transportation, and 40% of those are just in-town trips. The town of Eagle is only about 7 miles long, so this e-bike rebate program is having a really big impact. The last thing I wanted to mention that I really want to highlight here is that it is possible to go ahead and start doing the work even before your plan is crystal clear and totally finalized. We've figured out a lot of this as we've been moving towards these plans. I'm still working on refining our internal greenhouse gas inventory, but we know that there's actions that we can take now that are going to move us towards that 2030 and 2028 goal. We know that getting cars off the road is going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We're still figuring out exactly by which number, but we know that that's going to get us towards the goal. We know that electrifying our buildings is going to move us towards our 2028 goal. Again, we're still figuring out exactly how much, but we know that that's a critical piece. So I just really want to make the point that it's, it's totally possible and very practical to be able to start the work while you're refining your planning. So I'm going to hand it off to Laura, who's going to share about our partnership.
Thanks, Kira. Does this mic work? Great. I'm going to set a timer for myself because I need that. My name is Laura Hartman. I'm the founder and executive director of the Adam Palmer Sustainability Fund. And you've heard from the town here their story about starting this sustainability work in 2021 and kind of where the town is now at the tail end of 2024. And I'm going to tell a parallel story from the perspective of a nonprofit partner also trying to build capacity over these same 3 years in working with the town. How many people here are part of the nonprofit sector? A few, yeah, great, very special. We're very different than government, right? Nonprofits hold a really different space. I see nonprofits as very responsive to community needs, looking to close gaps in a nimble way, being that connective tissue between community members, local government, other institutions. And this work would look really different without nonprofits. I mean, just take a second and imagine climate action work as being purely government-led or purely utility-led. We would not have that community feeling, right? We wouldn't have so much gathering and sharing of ideas, and we wouldn't have a lot of the connective pieces that I think are responsible in a lot of ways for making progress and for getting everyone on the same page. We've talked a lot in this conference about how we heard this morning the message that we need to all work together, right? That it doesn't matter if one person crosses the finish line. We have to do that as a team to win the game. And I think that nonprofits really serve an important role in that regard. And that's kind of what this partnership is all about. It's all about teamwork and it's all about relationships. So in 2021, after Adam, Andy, and Seth passed in the avalanche, the town showed a lot of leadership in saying, we're going to set this really ambitious goal, and they provided the seed funding to launch the Palmer Fund. And we were set up our mission exactly around that net zero 2030 goal. So we have this really close alignment with the town, which has proven to be an incredible asset. And at the same time that, just checking my time, at the same time that the town had this about 1.5 years between setting the goal and hiring the first sustainability specialist, they were trying to figure out, okay, what can we accomplish when we don't quite have staff to do this? We haven't made a budget allocation yet. So what does this look like? And it was similar for the Palmer Fund. It's like, hey, we're getting started. We want to work on the town or work on this with the town, but the town doesn't really have resources. We don't really have resources yet, so what can we get done? And that's how we kind of chose our first 3 projects. It was a little bit of this chicken and egg. It's like, okay, we want to be able to raise money towards these goals. You can't raise money until we've done something. Can't do something without money. So we worked with the town, did some advocacy around that curbside composting, connected with Honey Wagon, and through that partnership and through some advocacy and going to town council meetings and talking to people about this importance, we collectively were able to take a step towards curbside composting. We were able to publish this net zero action plan. and we were able to do some advocacy with Core Transit, which is our new Eagle Valley Transit Authority, who initially, when passed by ballot initiative, was not going to be providing service to Eagle residents, even though we were paying taxes into it. And so we were able to kind of advocate through that and do some work in the community. Some of these projects that didn't cost a lot of money, but made a difference, right? And then as the town started to accumulate resources, Kira, and set aside that 2%, that $250,000 a year, we were able to move in step as well. So we had a donor, Rich Klubine from Active Energies, who was able to donate a solar panel installation to the Brush Creek Elementary School greenhouse, and Palmer Fund facilitated that project. We were able to be one of the pilot programs of this community funding model. And then over the course of the last year and a half, Kira and I, see, you know it's me because I'm wearing the same shirt. Didn't want anyone to get confused. Kira and I were able to work together for the past year and a half on establishing an MOU, right? We kind of backed everything up to the beginning and said, okay, now that we're 3 years in, we've learned some things, let's write an MOU that really outlines the partnership and kind of codifies the strategic alignment. So we worked for almost a year on that MOU. And in the MOU, which was we signed it last week. Scott and I. Feels like a big deal. But we kind of looked at that community funding model and said, okay, Palmer Fund can bring some capacity here. So we're actually going to be setting up a community advisory board and then managing that board. And the board of community members is going to make funding recommendations for that community funding pool. And that'll go before town council. So we're engaging more of the community in the process. We're creating space for more voices to be heard, to be involved, and we're really hoping there's going to be young people, women, Spanish speakers, and bringing some more representative voice of our community to the table there. And then we're going to leverage philanthropy, right? So we talked about that 2-to-1, 3-to-1. We're going to be able to fundraise and provide matching dollars to what the town is allocating. And I think this story, parallels the town's journey, and it's really kind of coming full circle. And there was a lot of twists and turns along the way, and I thought, I don't know where exactly we're going. And today it feels like we're in the place that we intended to be 3 years ago, and I think that's really exciting, and I think it kind of speaks to the power of relationships, the power of building trust over time, that nonprofits and local government have the ability to do. Thank you.
All right, well, I am going to wrap this up very succinctly, but I just want to acknowledge the fact that wearing the same shirt to a presentation is a really good idea. I've been wearing the same black shirt for about 20 years because it has a nice slimming effect as I get on years, and that's my costume. I'm sticking to it. Really inspired by this discussion today. It's incredible what you can do in your backyards if you have a really strong, powerful vision, a long-term plan for your vision. In other words, not just the next budget cycle, but the next 10, 50, 100, think 500 years. Don't you think that people will be coming from all over the world to your towns 500 years from now to see what you have? These places are nature's last stand, as E.O. Wilson would say. This is where people come to see wildlife, to see mountains, to see water, to get the soulful benefit of being around water. And there's very little wilderness left even in North America today. And you guys are the stewards, even though you're living in suburban, urban communities, for that surrounding landscape that people will come to see over time. So don't disregard the importance of all this from a bigger perspective, and why this is so important to have meetings like this to talk about it, how we can show up and be better stewards of the land, reduce our impacts in all different ways, from transportation to power usage to recycling to just having an infrastructure in your towns that can support more and more visitation, because I can tell you that's coming. I also wanted to say that you know, there have been a lot of philosophers over the years who might have come from the spiritual community or whatever, and also environmentalists are all saying the same thing. David Brower saying that there's no business to be done on a dead planet. Very true. And Gandhi saying, be the change you want to see in the world. So everything you're talking about today starts with you. How you conduct yourselves, how you show up, how you lead in your communities, how you get yourself out of whatever it is, watching TV, riding the bike, whatever, and inspiring your communities to do this incredible work. I am so proud of what has been done with this group here, and I know it's taking place in a lot of other communities around this country. These places are really, really valuable to the planet, so let's think of them in those terms. Thanks a lot.
I'm gonna turn this one off.
All right. So Casey was an audible, like I said, and I've known Casey on and off for quite some time now. Very good friends with his sister, and his sister invited, she came pick me up in the airport and went out to her house, and she said, Casey's going to be in town. And I said, wow, maybe he'll be willing to come. And it was like, well, how do we weave him in? How do we take someone from the corporate world to the municipal world? And what struck me was a little bit like what Benji was talking about today. It takes everybody. It takes everything. And for me to see corporations like Patagonia so passionate about sustainability and climate change, small town like Eagle so passionate, it just speaks to the large, just how far-reaching this is. And I was super grateful that he decided to come. One of the things that, when we're running out of time, so I'll keep it fairly quick, but when Casey and I talked on Friday night, what became really clear is this movement isn't expensive. People always say it's expensive, right? Yes, it costs money. We're leveraging 2-to-1, 3-to-1, great. But the truth of it is that it adds value. It adds value to your community. It adds value to your residents. It adds value to corporations. And when that stuff starts to add value is when it's really going to multiply. And it already is happening. So I'm supposed to do a call to action right now, which I'm not very good at this sort of stuff. But I will say before we turn it over to questions is be a leader, lead by example. Don't be afraid of the future. Embrace it. The future is being better to the planet. The future is sustainability. Embrace it and don't be afraid of it. Don't wait for the plan and then start the funding. Just get things going. It's amazing what we've been able to do at the town in the last 3 years. It's amazing to me coming back 3 years later, Mountain Towns 2030, seeing the changes that are already happening. So I just urge all of you to don't be afraid. Just get out there and do it, and some really wonderful things will happen for you. I can promise that. So with that, I'll open it to questions, and let me know if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, and I'll pass the microphone to whoever's best to answer the question. Yes, sir.
I agree with the word amazing. What you're doing is amazing as a Colorado resident. You are leading by example. So I apologize. I'm going to ask a little bit of a difficult question. I've read your plan. I've talked to Kira before. I work in Routt County. And you're particularly transportation and buildings, you're not going to get zero emissions from them by 2030. So that means you've got to start thinking about what the net and net zero means. And I'm curious how you're thinking about that. I know it's maybe too early, as you don't know what, but how you're going to handle that, both in terms of the costs and other sorts of things.
Yeah, right. So we have two goals: the 2028 for town operations, 2030 for community-wide. 100% frank, yeah, the community-wide 2030 on buildings and transportation is going to be very tough, right? But our buildings, we're very fortunate that our energy provider is Holy Cross Energy. Currently, they're 80% renewable already. Probably by our goal, 2028, hopefully be 100%. So our building's fairly no-brainer. We're just going to electrify, all right? And if we electrify our buildings and our electricity's coming from renewable energy, it goes a long, long way for that. And as Kira mentioned, we're fortunate enough to have this grant coming our way. It's basically a 3-to-1. We put in 250, we get 750, we have $1 million. And so we're going to be able to do about $1 million worth of changing of our buildings to electrify, which is going to do quite a bit. We don't have many buildings. We're a small town. So the buildings with our energy provider is going to be a little bit easier than if you didn't have an energy provider that was 100% renewable. And I'll let Kira answer any other like technical questions on that. Yeah.
It's a great question, but part of what we realize is we're going to have to focus on some carbon offsets, right? We know that's going to be part of our plan, but since we're all new to the journey, joining Mr. Turnipseed, the mayor of Eagle, we're going to focus on the actions we can take and then start to work on our carbon offsets as plan B. So I don't know if that directly answers, but I think that's kind of what you were asking.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, whether you had gotten there yet, but got a few years to think about it.
We have ideas.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I had a question. It sounds like you all pursued the tax credit for the renewable energy system, and curious how the direct pay process worked. If there was any like lessons learned that you all had in like securing those funds. Sorry, I'm almost done. And just yeah, if you could communicate that as other curious towns that would be like really counting on that 30 to 40% off.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'll let Kira answer that because it came up yesterday. I don't know if anyone was at the vehicle electrification breakout too. The same sort of question came up.
Thank you. So we're really beginning this process, but the key for us was to make sure that we paid for that solar array in cash so we could utilize the full benefit. That's a really key item that we learned that we need to approach. I think that you can still take advantage of it through an EPC, potentially through a financing mechanism, but it gets a little sticky and then you get haircutted on how much money you can get back. My understanding now, which again, preliminary, we're pre-filing this year, and then you are supposed to be able to officially file with the following tax year in which the project's operational. So our solar array should be operational next week. So we're pre-filing at any point this fall and then submitting next year's tax return, and then we should see that money somewhere within the next year. My understanding is that towns that have already done this, they have yet to see that check, but that they've been able to communicate with the IRS and that there's new resources coming out that are pretty easy to understand and read. And we were actually able to work with Year Out Energy to get some other resources, and they helped point us in the right direction as well. So definitely lean on your partners. And if you're with a municipality, ICLEI USA has some really great resources on that too. Anybody else? I know we're at about time, slightly over time, so if there's a burning question, we'll answer that. We're not? Oh, sorry. I think I just had the timing wrong. Yeah, we'll take any other questions. Yeah.
I would just like throw out just some more on the IRA funding. Most of your partners, the first thing they're going to tell you is that they're not financial advisors, and if they don't tell you that, they're breaking the law. So find a municipal advisor who's familiar with the tax code, and there are a lot of firms that have sprouted up and become experts in this since the new ITC, and there are others that have been doing this for a decade, but they will help you to navigate this new regime in which non-taxpaying entities can now get tax dollars back. And talk to folks that have done it already, because it's kind of a scary thing as a municipality. Oh, you're just telling me free money's going to fall out of the sky? It's pretty cool though. So.
One thing's related to that solar array that Kira was responding to, and maybe one other little tool in the toolbox for everyone. I'm not sure how many people are here from municipal governments, but in Colorado anyway, we have to have these enterprise funds, water, wastewater, trash. They can't make money, they can't lose money, but typically they have some decent reserves. So when we looked at our energy use, certainly the water and wastewater treatment plant were our biggest electrical users. So it was easy to go, all right, let's go try to do solar at those because those are our biggest users. Well, they're also the ones that have some money in their funds. So if your general fund's a little low, you can go and utilize your enterprise funds as long as it's doing something for those specific funds. So just another thing to think about if you're wondering where to get money from if you're in the municipal government world. Any other questions?
It's a smaller question, but I was curious about y'all's e-bike rebate program, and specifically how you selected those 23 folks, and then if you had any other like mechanisms that were part of it, like if you had to go through a bike shop or any other pieces of that.
Yeah, thank you. So we received a grant, the local community e-bike rebate or local government e-bike rebate program from the state of Colorado, which required the rebates to go to only income qualified residents. So we had two different tiers. We had up to 80% of the area median income, and then we had up to 100% of the area median income. And so that just differentiated on how much of a rebate each of those categories of individuals could receive. And we did structure it really as first come, first serve. However, the outreach that we did, we primarily targeted our low-income neighborhoods, our Spanish-speaking neighborhoods, ones that we haven't really engaged as much with our sustainability work to try and bring everyone to that table. So we had bilingual resources, we issued door hangers, we had it posted in our Eagle County Spanish newsletter, and the Palmer Fund really helped us out with that as well. So it was really beneficial. I don't think we reached any Spanish speakers, so that's something that we'd like to improve upon. I think people who are tuned into the town's efforts, who subscribe to our regular newsletter, were most poised to receive those. And so there was definitely room for improvement. And then in addition to that, we did post it as a post-sale rebate, primarily for the reason that we only have a few e-bike retail or a few bike shops within the town of Eagle, and only a couple of them have e-bikes at all. And the ones that have e-bikes might not meet everybody's needs. So if you're in an apartment building or a basement level lock-off, e-bikes can be pretty heavy, and you're not gonna be able to carry up a giant e-bike and get that out of your yard and take that to work. You might want a fold-up e-bike, or you might need a different style that actually encourages use. So we wanted to make it a little bit flexible, but it was definitely a pilot first trial. Let's see what we learn from this program.
Thank you.
I'll just add a couple thoughts there. Kira did an excellent job administering that program, and I know people are really excited about their e-bikes, but she mentioned the targeted outreach that we've done, and I think one area that we've jointly identified where we'd really like to put energy in the coming years is engaging with more of our Spanish-speaking community. And, in our valley, we have about, 33% of our population is Latino or Hispanic, and that's up to 54% in school-age children, and it's we sometimes have these sometimes the community feels really bifurcated, and in Eagle we've identified the need to really increase the diversity of voices at the table around sustainability in particular. So we had that targeted outreach. The Palmer Fund had a grant around climate justice, and we were able to hire 2 local climate advocates, young people that grew up in our community, one of whom was a native Spanish speaker, Kevin, and he went around with Kira and did a lot of door knocking and talked to people. And we have an event coming up in November where we're doing just some more community outreach to try and engage with just more diverse sectors of our community young people, lower income, working class, Spanish speaking. And I think that's a really important part of the work that we're doing and an important part of the outreach. And I don't want that to get left behind just because in some of our first attempts, we didn't make that connection, but it takes a lot of time to build that community trust. And I think we're really committed to doing that. Any other questions?
Thanks. I think if there's a place in Eagle where Spanish and English speakers could come together, it's definitely Costco. Every time I've been there. Well, hey, it's in Eagle County, right? I wanted to know if you could speak to any adaptation efforts that might be part of future sustainability goals.
I will say we've been very focused on mitigation and reducing what we know we're emitting right now, but we are working with our open space manager, and he's done a really great job of putting some pilot projects in place this year to look at sort of restoration projects and what we can restore locally with our habitat. Anything from like soil carbon sequestration to better improving stream channels and trying to just sort of beef up the natural habitat around us in order to get ready for some climate impacts that may be coming. We're really still in sort of this research phase, but we're partnering with some local soil carbon experts and ecology companies. So I can't tell you so much about that today, but I can definitely get you more resources from Brian later on.
I'll chime in and then pass it to Larry. I think that your question just like perfectly highlights the need for an environmental justice mindset. And when we think about adaptation, let's think about the populations that are going to bear the brunt of the impacts of the climate challenge. And that's going to be those with the least power, the least resources to be able to adapt and to navigate around those impacts. And I think that one aspect that comes up for me is housing, right? It's all interconnected. And so I'm also on our town planning and zoning commission. And we have several multifamily housing developments that are coming through. And traditionally, 30 years ago, we weren't building housing with air conditioning, right? And we weren't building with some of the density that we are now. And I think that one aspect of adaptation is just the way that we are approaching land use and the way that we are approaching housing now is really in anticipation of a different climate in 30 years versus what we had 30 years ago.
Thank you. What I would share with you, again, this is very high level, and we haven't been to the elected yet to visit with them, but there's a large developer in our community that has entitlements to develop 845 units on quite a few acres, hundreds of acres. We've been in quiet conversations to convert a couple hundred acres and reduce its development footprint in exchange for tax credits. And it's a complicated partnership that's going to involve the Conservation District, the Land Trust, Eagle County, and the town of Eagle. But we've quietly started those conversations to see if we can reduce that impact because it happens to be right next to a large open space that exists today that under the leadership of Mayor Turnipseed and council, county commissioners, and some others, they preserved a huge chunk of property that just happens to be the place that the elk and deer come for winter forage. They come down to the lowland and that's where they stay. We have an opportunity to potentially shorten this development, even though housing is critical to us, but do it in respect of wildlife and preserving the natural habitat. So we don't have it all figured out, but we're willing to test a bunch of concepts and ideas and see where it takes us.
Where was that meadow and what rifle
Well, this is this is way off subject of that, but it does back up to this Brush Creek Valley open space, and the elk do come down there a lot. And one thing they are doing is controlled hunts for disabled veterans in there right now. So there's sort of a cool little play on that as well. This doesn't really answer your question about adaptation, but housing came up, and one thing maybe I'd like to throw out there too is without the goal. We didn't even have the new building codes in place, okay, but we had the goal. So we had two fairly large housing developments come in, all multifamily. One was 200 and some units, the other one's now 77 units, so that's 300 and some units. Those are all electric, okay, without us even asking, without it even being in the code. It's just a goal. They made them all electric. They have EV charging stations. So you can accomplish so much by just getting this goal out, and without even the building codes or anything in place. Amazing. One thing that's come up in these conversations that made me think too, we have Jamie, who is our communications person here now. We never had a communication person before in the town, and we're going to utilize her to help us reach out to the community, let them know what we're doing with our sustainability stuff, because I think the more education, the more they know what you're doing, the more engagement you're going to get, and the better it'll be, hopefully, for the community. So that's another big, big part of it, too. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for coming. It was very enjoyable. It's nice to see everyone.